So Daniel Cormier is saying before the fight that I'll end up poking him in the eyes at some point. And the reason why he says that is because I do poke people in the eyes. And it's very illegal, but I do it. Sticking my hand out and pushing their face away. Kind of like you see on TV where like the big brother's holding his little brother and the little brother can't hit him, right? Because his arms isn't like long enough or whatnot. And I do that in real fights. Like if someone's coming at me, I'll just put my hand on their forehead. And a lot of times they end up missing the punch that was intended for my face. And sometimes it lands in people's eyes. It's working.
Alright, so another UFC card goes by, and another main event is ruined by blatant fouls that not only influenced the result of the fight, but once again, nothing was done by the officials to actually officiate. Because during Manel Kape versus Asu Almabayev, both guys were fouling each other back and forth, but it was the double eye poke combo from Kape that led to the fight being stopped. I am honestly so sick and tired of fighters committing fouls and getting away with them without any repercussions, and it's gotten to the point where it seems pretty clear to me that the UFC doesn't just allow cheating, cheating is encouraged. And for those of you guys who take offense to me saying that, then how do you explain why the UFC has done absolutely nothing in over 30 years of business to either reduce cheating or dole out heavier punishments for fighters who consistently break the rules? And yeah, in this video, we're going to be talking about all this and more. But first, let's talk about Kape versus Almabayev. Guys, don't get me wrong here, I never really thought that Almabayev had a real shot at beating Kape or anything. I feel like he's shown that he's not a complete enough fighter to compete at the highest levels of the UFC, and I definitely did pick Kape to get the win heading into the fight. But regardless, the fact that this fight was so riddled with clear fouls where both guys were hitting each other with illegal shots just leaves a sour taste in my mouth. In the first round, Almabayev poked Kape in the eye with about 2 minutes left on the clock, then about a minute later, Kape takes a knee to the balls. Then, in the second round with about 30 seconds left on the clock, Almabayev complains about getting poked in the eye after separating from an exchange. Kape objects that it was a punch. The fight is paused momentarily by Mike Beltran, but after a very brief review by the ringside referee, the strike was officially deemed legal and the fight was immediately resumed. But the thing is, as the fighters were in their corners after round 2, we're shown a replay of the incident and we can clearly see that Kape actually did open hand rake his fingers across Almabayev's eye. Which begs the question, what the fuck was the ringside referee looking at? The ringside referee has like one fucking job and somehow, some way, he's not able to look at a TV monitor properly. And then in the third round, after Kape hits a blitz, Almabayev can once again be seen gesturing that he was poked in the eye, but after his previous eye poke complaint was wrongfully shut down, the referee didn't give him the benefit of the doubt on this one. Kape then smelt blood, and after chasing Almabayev across every single corner of the octagon, the fight was officially stopped and Kape was declared the winner by TKO. But lo and behold, upon a video replay of the blitz, we can once again clearly see Kape land not one but 2 eye pokes in succession. The first in this sequence was another very obvious scrape across the eye, but this one was actually worse than the previous one. And then immediately after this, Kape throws a right hand where he initially has his hand closed, but at the very last moment, he then opens his hand so that his finger directly goes into Almabayev's eye. What the fuck? This guy Kape straight up disguised his eye poke as a legitimate punch all the way up until the very last moment. There is no way that something like this would happen by accident. Look, I'll be the first one to admit that this was a pretty clever way to cheat, but the savviness behind it makes it all the more scummy. Like, this is the question mark kick of eye pokes. And excuse me for jumping to a grandiose conclusion here, but I have a really hard time believing that Manel just thought of doing this on the fly right then and there. Also, I didn't know where to add this part in where it felt natural, but Manel Kape also clearly walked into the octagon with a massive gyno, so the dude is on steroids too. And of course, even though the eye pokes could clearly be seen on the video replay that they showed after the fight was stopped, none of the officials actually cared. Because the fight had already been called off, and doing their due diligence is an inconvenience. Why actually officiate during your job as an official when you can instead go home and watch TV? You know, something that UFC fans used to say that I always hated hearing is, oh, the referee has the hardest job in the octagon, as if we aren't watching two guys try to physically incapacitate each other live on camera. I haven't heard anybody say this in a while because thankfully people have finally wisened up to the fact that almost all of the UFC's refs are just not that good at their jobs and don't enforce the rules half as much as they should. And in the case of Mike Beltran and whoever the ringside referee was for this fight, these two completely dropped the ball, which isn't all of that much of a surprise, yet I still find myself being disappointed in the level of negligence consistently displayed by these officials. I get that it's easy to put all the blame on Mike Beltran here because he was the man reffing the fight itself, but I really feel like most of the officiating fuck-ups need to be put on the ringside referee. He is the guy who reviewed the very first eye poke and deemed it a clean shot somehow. And in reality, he also should have stepped in and told Mike Beltran that the ending sequence of the fight stemmed from a double eye poke. But like I said, these guys just don't have any real intention of doing their jobs properly. But honestly, I think that this sport deserves officials with actual balls who can make the tough decisions to enforce the rules instead of shrugging their shoulders whenever a foul takes place. Now, I've seen a lot of people saying that Dana and the UFC also play a big role in cheating not being punished. People online have been claiming that officials are too afraid to actually do their job because if they interfere too much in a way that Dana doesn't like, then they risk getting blacklisted from working in the promotion. And the thing is, I kinda see where these people are coming from. Obviously, Dana runs the UFC with an iron fist, and we've seen him get rid of high-profile employees for reasons that sometimes seem pretty arbitrary. So, hypothetically speaking, if there was a referee who all of a sudden started taking away points over legitimate fouls and thus started affecting the results of fights, then Dana probably wouldn't be too happy with that. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, that there was a make-believe UFC champion named Bon Bones, who although he's a fantastic fighter, he's also known for being a dirty cheater. And one day, Bon Bones, who's known for poking his opponents in the eye, decides to pull off one of his patented eye pokes during a close fight, and thus a referee takes a point away from Bones. And because a point was deducted, this resulted in him losing his title, and thus his star power takes a massive hit. If something like this happened in the UFC, then you already know that Dana would do everything in his power to get that referee fired. He'd go to the post-fight press conference and cry about how the ref interfered with the fight. He'd probably defend his golden boy by saying that the eye poke wasn't even intentional, and then he'd make a big show out of demanding that the commission never allow this ref to work at a UFC event ever again. Then, because the commission doesn't have a spine and is in bed with the UFC, they immediately fold to Dana's temper tantrum, thus the referee who took a point from Bones never sees the inside of the UFC octagon ever again, all because he wanted to maintain the rules and hold professional fighters to a professional standard. And now all the other UFC referees see this happen, and because they don't want to lose their jobs, they continue to maintain the status quo of not taking away points even after multiple blatant fouls. Thus, nothing changes, and fighters will continue to view the rules of MMA as a set of loosely regulated suggestions. Do you guys see what I'm trying to say here? Literally nothing will change when it comes to UFC officiating until the UFC actually starts to care about having fighters follow the rules, and that is just simply not going to happen anytime soon. I genuinely don't understand why the UFC doesn't care at all about the rampant fouls that have been taking place throughout the history of the company, but I do know that by not enforcing stricter punishments and by defending the image of fighters who repeatedly cheat, then Dana is quite literally encouraging other fighters to break the rules. Like, let's not forget here that this is the same exact company that refuses to use Trevor Whitman's MMA gloves that by all accounts are much better designed than the UFC gloves. Whitman's gloves are designed to keep the fighter's fingers bent for the sole purpose of preventing eye pokes. But when it comes to the UFC's piece of shit gloves, fighters have noted that the design of the gloves actually puts pressure on the arms and hands in a way that leaves their fingers extended, which is the driving force behind why there are so many eye pokes in the UFC.
So I actually
put you in such a comfortable hand, but like it's a normal position.
Have you brought these to the UFC?
I have. I've been speaking.
You showed me these quite a while ago, and I said it before, and I think you've improved on them. But
So
this is far superior. So the company that makes the UFC gloves wants to own your shit.
Completely. They don't want to own it. The UFC wants to own it.
Oh, come on.
So the thing is with it is, again, I feel like I want to bring this to all organizations, but that's not really the real issue. Like, the finger pokes is one thing. At least you're getting paid.
Now, take, for example, the gloves designed by Trevor Whitman, Pride FC, ONE FC, and Bellator, which are all designed with a curve in it, which allows fighters to rest their hands with their fingers bent. And I'm sure this goes without saying, but out of all of these promotions, the UFC is the only one that has had a significant issue with eye pokes.
Now, these are the best gloves on the market. My personal opinion. If I had to choose which glove I would rather fight in, I would always pick these gloves all the time. And people always ask me, well, DJ, you fight in the UFC, you fight in one championship. Didn't you train in those gloves? No, I didn't. I hated training in those gloves because, one, if you hit somebody, those gloves, there's nothing to them. They will welt up.
These greedy fucks at the UFC literally tried to buy out Whitman's gloves in an exclusivity deal so that he wouldn't be able to sell them to anybody else, and when he said no, they said to hell with you, we'll keep using our dogshit gloves instead. And this is what I mean. The UFC, which is a massively successful multi-billion-dollar business, has all the resources available in order to fix their issue with eye pokes, but they willingly choose to not do anything about it. Okay, I mean, they did try to roll out some newly designed gloves last year where the goal was to reduce eye pokes, but then John Jones complained complained to Dana that he didn't like them, so within like 3 days, Dana was able to reinstate the old gloves that resulted at least 1 eye poke per event. And as much as we can provide our own little solutions as to what the UFC and the commissions can do to reduce fouls, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I mean, just look at Dana's 2 favorite male fighters of the last decade in Jon Jones and Conor McGregor. Both of them have been known to shamelessly cheat in their fights to get an advantage. Jon has made a career out of poking guys in the eye, and Conor pulled out every foul in the book when he fought Khabib and also hooked his fingers in Poirier's gloves in his last UFC fight. Yet you will never hear Dana criticize or condemn them because at a very simple level, he just doesn't care. And frankly, I'm worried that the only thing that's going to get him to start taking this stuff seriously is if someone actually loses an eyeball due to getting poked, or maybe a dude loses one of his balls after getting kneed in the cup. But until that day comes, which who knows if it ever even will, then I think that we as fans should accept the fact that cheating is very much encouraged in the UFC, and there's nothing that anybody can do or will do about it. Anyways, that's the video for today. Definitely let me know what you think about the state of the UFC right now. Do you think that the cheating issue is only going to get worse, and what do you think can be done in order to improve upon it? As always, if you like the video, then like the video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. I appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.